Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video, we're going to be talking all about fairies. What do they look like? What do they act like? Are they like you see in TV shows and movies? We're going to be sitting down and dispelling some of the misconceptions surrounding the Fae. When you ask people about spiritual beings, one of the most popular groups that comes up are fairies. A lot of witches today want to work with fairies within their magical practice, but not a lot of people actually know what fairies are really like. How do you actually work with them? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, as well as dispelling a lot of the misconceptions that surround them. Now, before we get started, I do just want to put out a couple of disclaimers here. The first is that if you are planning on working with the Fae, please do a lot of research before you get started. So many people jump into working with the Fae without really knowing who they're working with or what they're going to have to do in return, and they can get themselves in a lot of trouble by doing this. Just like with all spiritual beings, you need to treat the Fae with a great deal of respect, and you also need to know how to protect and shield yourself from any harm that might come from it. So if you're thinking of working with the Fae, please make sure you do so much research before you get started. The second is that all of the information I have about fairies comes from my own personal experiences, the experiences of my personal friends, and also things that I have learned from authors and other reading materials. I cannot speak for all types of fae around the entire world, nor do I plan to. I can only speak about my own experiences and the things that I know myself. So now that that is out of the way, let's start with the misconceptions. So the first misconception is that the Fae are all the same. They all look the same, they all act the same, they're the same being that are just called fairies. Now this is a big misconception that's mainly been pushed by modern media, like movies and TV shows, and a lot of the photographs from Victorian England that depict fairies really push the idea that all of these fairies look the same. It's really not true at all. The term fae or fairy is actually an umbrella term. It encompasses a huge range of different spiritual beings that have enough in common to all be classified as the fae, even though they aren't all the same. It's the equivalent to the term fish. There's lots of fish, they live in different areas, they look different, they behave different, they eat different things, they act differently, but they all have enough in common to all be called fish. The same can be said for the Fae. It's a whole range of different spiritual beings that act different and look different, but they all have enough in common to all be classified as the Fae. So if someone says that they work with fairies, it's best to not assume that they're working with the cute, adorable, flitty little fairies that you see in TV shows and movies. Because while yes, they could be working with that type of Fae, they could also be working with brownies or boggarts, hobgoblins or pixies. It really all depends on what is in the local area and who they choose to work with. So misconception number 2 is that the Fae are all really tiny with beautiful wings, high-pitched voices, gorgeous faces. This simply isn't true. I'm sorry to disappoint. This is something that's largely been pushed by modern media. Movies and TV shows, as well as books and comics, have really pushed the idea that fairies are very small, very dainty, very beautiful creatures, when actually that isn't necessarily true. Now, of course, some Fae are going to be like this, but because the Fae is a classification for many different beings, not all of them are going to match this expectation. Some of them are going to be exceptionally tall, taller than humans, beautiful and elegant. Some of them are going to be very haggard and small in strange colours with claws. Some of them are likely going to be very petite, but some of them are very large as well. And it really entirely depends on the type of Fae that you've encountered. So the documented reports of the Fae really do change dramatically from encounter to encounter, because some Fae really do just look exceptionally different to others, and you may encounter two completely polar opposite Fae and not even realise that they are both fairies. And you often see that in the original folk stories of the Fae, the first-hand encounters that were written down in the 16th, 17th and 1800s, the Fae are often not depicted as being very beautiful. In a lot of them, they're actually depicted as being very scary. And it really all depends on the type of Fae that you've encountered. Some Fae might be really cute, but don't go into working with the Fae expecting that they're all going to be cute, friendly and adorable, because you will very much be disappointed. And also, please don't insult the Fae if you find one and it doesn't look like what you expect it to. Would you like to be insulted for the way you look? Probably not. So if you wouldn't like it, please don't do it to a Fae. It's definitely not a good idea. The third misconception is that fairies are all nice and kind and gentle and they all want to help. This definitely isn't true either. Now, of course, some fairies will be absolutely lovely. They will want to do everything they can to help and they will be genuinely kind and nice when they meet you. But not all fairies are going to be like that, and don't expect all fairies are going to want to be around you. Just like people, some fairies will really like humans, some will really, really hate them. Some will be completely indifferent and just don't care whether you're there or not. And that's a really important piece of knowledge when going into working with the Fae, is that you can't force a Fae to interact with you. Just like you can't force a wild animal to come near you, that's not the way it works. You have to enter into working with the Fae knowing that not all Fae are going to like you. And depending on the type of Fae that you are working with and the interactions they've had with humans beforehand, you might find that some Fae straight up hate you and really desperately don't want to be around you. So don't be insulted if a Fae does not want to work with you. It's not going to work with every single Fae, and the Fae also aren't there to work with you. They are spiritual beings in their own right. They have their own agenda. They have their own life and existence. And it's something I think a lot of people do forget, is that the Fae do not solely exist to please you. They don't exist to be your friend, to help you out, to do things for you spiritually whenever you want. The Fae exist in their own right, and not all of them are going to want to be around you, and also not all of them are going to be nice. And not only might they not be nice, some of them might actively seek to harm you if you don't leave them alone. So it's really important when going into all this that you know how to protect yourself, and it's one of the main reasons why I say that. It's not just me fearmongering, it's not me trying to freak you out. It's being realistic in that not all fairies will want to be around you, and some of them will very forcefully try to push you out of their life, out of their territory, depending on the type of Fae that you're working with. So it's really important to be prepared for that. The fourth misconception is that fairies only exist outside in flower beds and in woodland. This is a misconception that I see spread around so much, and it definitely is not accurate. The Fae are spiritual beings, although some of them might be closely connected to nature, and so you'll often find fairies being associated with nature spirits. Not all of them are going to interact with nature in the same way as you might think or that you might perceive. So you do have some Fae that live in nature, around woodland, in meadows, in flower gardens, but you also find Fae that live in deserts, by the coast, in the mountains, in houses. A lot of Fae are actually considered homely beings, like brownies for instance. They're considered a household Fae, whereas you might actually find Fae in a lot of different areas than you might immediately think. So don't just think that to find fairies you have to go out into your local woodland and you have to plant a bunch of flowers. The Fae exist essentially everywhere. You just have to know where to look and how to interact with them. Alongside this is the idea that fairies only exist in Europe and North America. Now, I see this being tossed around the internet mainly a lot, and it's not technically true, although it is partially true. So the term fae or fairy is mainly used in Northern Europe and now over in North America. But we often find that exceptionally similar spiritual beings are found almost everywhere around the world. So although in Asia or in Australia, South America, they might not be called fairies, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Fae don't exist within your area. It's likely that you have a different term for them. They often have different names around the world, but the characteristics of the Fae often line up almost exactly with the kind of Fae that you might find somewhere else around the world. So whereas in England we might refer to them as fairies, in Australia they might refer to them as something different. So if you don't live in Europe or North America, please don't be disheartened if you're reading books that refer to these spiritual beings as fairies and you've never heard that term being used in your own country. It may just be that you have a different term for the same kind of spiritual being. The fairies are one of the many spiritual beings around the world that seem to exist around the world. It's just that the name might vary depending on your country. So the fifth misconception is that the Fae are just waiting around to help. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, they're there to help you with whatever you want. This is a very negative misconception that can lead to a lot of dispute in relationships with the Fae. A lot of people have issues because they genuinely believe that the Fae are literally there at your beck and call to do whatever it is that you need them to do. This definitely isn't true. The Fae have their own lives, as I've mentioned earlier. They are spiritual beings in their own right, with their own existence and their own agenda. And a lot of people do go wrong when working with the Fae because they do believe that the Fae are there to do whatever it is that you want, whenever it is that you want it. Now, I find that this being mainly perpetuated in modern books on fairies, and these books also have a tendency to refer to them as being cute, small, dainty spiritual beings, which we know at this point that they definitely are not. Fae are not there to do whatever you want, whenever you want. They are spiritual beings, and you form a relationship with them as you would any other spiritual being. If you wouldn't ask a demon to do whatever it is that you wanted, whenever you wanted it doing, and you wouldn't ask an ancestor to be at your beck and call every minute of every day, don't expect to ask a Fae for the same thing. Working with the Fae, like working with most other spiritual beings, is about forming a relationship with them. It's a give and take. You can't just take. And unfortunately, I find that in a lot of more modern books on spiritual practice, they do kind of push the idea that you can get lots and lots and lots out of working with spirits without giving much back, and this really isn't true. And this is where the idea of fairy offerings comes in. The idea being that you form a relationship with that Fae, you show them that you are willing to give them something in return, and then they, in turn, might be willing to help you with something, whether that be spiritual or energetic. They might be willing to help you in some way. If you can show them that you're genuinely invested in building a connection, in building a relationship with them. Now, the type of offering that you leave will really entirely depend on the type of Fae that you're working with. And it is about learning and understanding the Fae within your area and the Fae that you are connecting with in order to know which kind of offering is best for them. But with all of this, it is important to note that just because you leave offerings does not mean that they are obliged to help you. It definitely isn't the case. They can take all of the offerings that you give them and they still might turn around and go, no, sorry, I don't want to help you, but thanks for the stuff. Much like humans, although I don't think they'd much appreciate being referred to as humans, every single individual member of the Fae is going to have a slightly different approach to existence. And just like you might find some people out there that are willing to help you with anything, even if they don't know you, they're just so giving in who they are as a person. You also find people that no matter what you offer them, they will never do anything for you. The Fae are very much similar to this. Every single Fae is going to have a different personality, and you're going to have to learn to work with it the same as you would work with people. So just with a person, you wouldn't walk up to a stranger in the street and go, I need you to do this for me. They will probably flat out turn you down, and so probably will a Fae. You have to really build up that relationship to form that trust and that connection before you should be asking them for favors. It's just common courtesy within spiritual practice. And number 6 is the idea that Fae are all sweet and kind and lovely and won't do anything to hurt you. This is probably one of the worst misconceptions on the list, and it's probably the one that gets people into the most trouble. Now, I find that movies and TV shows are really bad for portraying them as absolutely lovely and kind, but actually I find that a lot of modern books are just as bad. And this is why so many beginners genuinely believe that fairies are the ideal place to start when it comes to spirit work. They might stay away from ancestor work and demons because that can go wrong, but they seem to believe that fairies are somehow just so much better and easier, nice, kind even. Now, definitely some fairies can be like this, but it's important to note that fairies, going back through time, were not considered to be the nice, lovely beings they are considered to be today. People really feared fairies because of what they were capable of doing. Now, one of the main beliefs when it comes to the Fae is that they can't lie. Now, I'd say within some members of the Fae family, this is true. I'm not certain about all of them, but the Fae are generally considered to be unable to lie. And a lot of people will equate this to, well, then they have to tell the truth. That means they're fine, they're safe, they're good. It's not necessarily true. The fairies are also known as tricksters. Although they might not be able to lie to you, that doesn't mean they won't lead you down the wrong path. Trick you with lots of words and strange actions. There's a lot of reason why people were genuinely believed to have gone missing after encounters with the Fae. People being led down the wrong path into boggy areas where they would then be found a few days later, no longer alive. There's lots of stories of people literally being snatched out of their bed by fairies, and the terror within communities, especially in the 16th and 17th centuries, was really, really prevalent. Fairies today are almost considered to be a watered-down version of their predecessors, when actually they definitely aren't. Fairies can be tricky buggers. They can mess with you, they can take things, they can really alter your perception, and it's really important that you do take a great deal of care when working with them. There's a few ways to ease this, of course. Not all members of the Fae group are going to immediately mess with your life, but some of them definitely can, almost probably to the same extent as demons or really annoyed human spirits. There's lots that can go wrong, especially if you treat them like they're servants, which is what a lot of practitioners unfortunately do. So there are a few ways to protect yourself against them and to mainly just prepare yourself in case anything does happen, so you can get yourself out of the situation you've got yourself into. Before you start working with the Fae, always make sure that you do a lot of research. Know exactly what you're dealing with. Know how to protect yourself against it. Know what to expect. A lot of beginners jump straight into work with the Fae because they genuinely believe that they are nice, cute, and genuine creatures. And yes, some of them definitely are. But they're spiritual beings just like any other. They're not your servants, so don't treat them like it. If you say that you're going to leave them offerings, leave them offerings. Don't just suddenly stop leaving offerings. It's exceptionally insulting. Be careful with your words. Words hold power. Names hold power. There's a reason that Rumpelstiltskin was so keen on names. The Fae are very, very popular when it comes to names, so please always be careful with your words. Be careful with what you say. Be careful with how you speak. Be careful of the tone that you use. It's always said that don't apologize to a Fae, and I personally strongly hold that belief. Maybe this isn't the case with all Fae, but with some of them, don't apologize to them. Try your best not to insult them. Try to be as genuine and as nice as you can, but always be prepared that maybe the Fae that you're working with isn't quite as nice as you immediately thought. If you're planning on working with the Fae, please don't offer to do anything or to give anything until you've formed that relationship. Also, don't ask them to interfere energetically in your life if you don't know them well enough, because otherwise it might be the equivalent of giving a complete stranger the key to your house. They can come in and mess with everything. So please, if you're going to work with any spiritual being, not just fairies, make sure you really know who you're dealing with before you let them loose in your life. It's really important to remember that working with the Fae isn't a game. There's a reason that a lot of content creators don't talk about the Fae, and it's because a lot of beginners jump headfirst into something that they don't understand. The Fae, although they can be amazing to work with, I've had some absolutely fantastic experiences with them. I've got many friends who've had the most phenomenal experiences with the Fae, but it's always done with a level of caution. If you wouldn't do something with a demon or a human spirit, please don't do it with a Fae. If you wouldn't jump into working with demons, don't do the same. It's really important to treat them with the level of respect that they deserve. And also, don't believe everything you see in TV and movies. Please, if you read something in a modern witchcraft book about fairies, always cross-reference, always do your research. In a few weeks, I have a video coming out on my favourite books to learn about and work with the Fae. And that might be really useful for any of you who want to understand the folklore and the tradition of fairies, as well as who want to actively work with them in their magical and spiritual practice. But please, you guys, always cross-reference your resources, always do so much more research than you think you are going to need. Don't get yourself into a situation you don't know how to get yourself out of, and please make sure you know how to banish, you know how to protect yourself, and you know how to shield. These are all so important when working with all spiritual beings, not just fairies. But in this instance, I think a lot of people don't think of that because they do assume that the fairies are all going to be lovely, sweet, kind, and nice. So I hope this has been helpful. I definitely didn't want to scare anyone with this, but I think a lot of people hold a lot of misconceptions when it comes to working with the Fae, and they definitely need to be broken down, especially with so many new people coming into the craft. I really just want to make sure that no one does anything stupid and gets themselves in harm's way because they believe a lot of the misconceptions that are spread about fairies. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a like. It really, really means so much to me. Is there anything that you would like to know about fairies that I've obviously not touched on in this video? If you do, feel free to put it down in the comment section. I'm trying to do a whole series on working with the Fae, just so I can clear up a lot of the misconceptions and try to give you some really useful information for working with them. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community, feel free to post it down in the comment section. There is a Discord server down in the description box. There is a link. So if you would like to talk more about fairies and other spiritual beings, you can do so down there if you want to. We have a growing community of some amazing people, and there's talks going on basically all the time. And if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every single week. A massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Your names will be on the end screen in just a moment. When the video about the books on fairies comes out, I will put a link down in the description box so that you guys can go check that out. I hope you have a marvelous magical day. I hope you're all staying safe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!